My name is Savannah Ellis, and at 32, I never thought my life would become the kind of story whispered at business conferences or used as a cautionary tale in therapy sessions. Just last month, I sold my biotech company for $22 million. Years of blood, sweat, and caffeine finally paid off. I had my dream home in sight, an elegant estate nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains with glass walls, an indoor garden, and enough space to finally breathe. I was ready to make a $10 million cash offer to seal the deal. But first, I needed a secure place to keep that money overnight. Not a bank vault. Not a deposit box. I chose my mother's house. The irony isn't lost on me now. By morning, both my mother, Lorraine, and my younger sister, Mira, had vanished. And so had the money. They left only a note taped to the coffee machine and silence that hummed like a siren in my chest. If you're wondering why I'm smiling, keep listening. Because while they were boarding a private plane to freedom, I already had a plan in motion they didn't see coming. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the roots of why I trusted them, to the seed of betrayal planted long before either of us realized it would bloom. I grew up in a worn 2-bedroom rental in the heart of Cincinnati. It was the kind of place where the walls were always cold and the upstairs neighbors always loud. My mother, Lorraine, worked double shifts at a senior care center. The job left her exhausted and her back bowed, but she never once let herself break in front of us. Christmases meant hand-knitted scarves. Birthdays came with homemade banana bread and hugs that smelled like rose lotion and disinfectant. Mira and I shared a bunk bed until I left for college. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Or so I believed. From the moment I could read, I devoured books on anatomy and chemistry. I was obsessed with how the body worked, and more importantly, how to fix what broke. While kids went to slumber parties, I stayed up solving logic puzzles. When Mira was out late with her friends, I was running research simulations on my laptop in the basement. My mother used to say I was born chasing something. A better life, maybe. Or just running from the kind of life she felt trapped in. I worked my way through Stanford on scholarship, double majoring in biochemistry and data science, surviving on vending machine protein bars and secondhand textbooks. Even then, I sent money home when I could. $50 here, $100 there. Enough to help with groceries or car repairs or Mira's impulsive spending. The startup came later, NeuroNest, a company built around diagnostic algorithms for neurological disorders. It was niche, hard to sell, and burned through every cent I had. But it was mine. I lived out of a friend's garage for 6 months to keep it afloat. I maxed out 3 credit cards. And finally, after 4 long years, it hit. 1 hospital, 1 investor. And suddenly, everything changed. Through it all, I kept my family close. I never wanted to forget where I came from. I bought my mom a cozy house near Charleston, paid off every debt she had, and gave Mira money for counseling, for school, for whatever she needed. And maybe, in doing all that, I blinded myself to something darker growing between us. So when I withdrew $10 million in cash, I didn't question where to put it. I told myself it was just one night, that nothing would go wrong. That was my first mistake. But what came next? That was theirs, and I was ready. After the acquisition went through, my phone lit up with messages, investors, old friends, even 2 professors I hadn't heard from in years. But the first calls I made were to my family. "Mom, it's done," I said, walking along the marina outside my office building, the wind tugging my hair into a frenzy. $22 million, they're wiring it now. There was a pause on the line. Then my mother's voice cracked with what I thought was pride. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "I knew you'd make it." Then came Mira, louder, more excitable. "Wait, does this mean you can finally help me open that wellness studio I've been dreaming about? With the Zen garden and everything?" I laughed because I was too happy to see the red flags. I'd made it. We'd made it. Or so I thought. That same week, I toured the Asheville property. It wasn't just a house, it was a sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling glass, a sprawling greenhouse, even a meditation loft. The seller had 3 offers already, but I knew a $10 million cash bid would shut it down. So I went to Moss and Harbor Private Banking in downtown Charleston, a place that didn't blink when you asked for 8 figures in a single withdrawal. The account manager, Mr. Eldridge, a stiff man with salt and pepper hair and an expression like he'd swallowed a lemon, sat me down. "Ms. Ellis, I must advise against this," he said. 10 million in physical currency is not just unorthodox, it's dangerous. Why not a wire? The seller insisted on immediacy, I explained, pulling out the offer agreement. Cash closes faster. No contingencies. You'll need armored transport, signatures on 5 waivers, and 3 business days for prep, he said. And I assume you've arranged storage? I nodded. Yes, a private vault. I didn't say it was in my mother's basement. 3 days later, I stood in a quiet, windowless room with 2 uniformed security professionals from Anderson Tactical, Derek Kane and Luis Moreno. Both were ex-military. Both had 0 tolerance for small talk. They loaded the sealed currency bags, each one tagged and locked, into matte black duffels. As we pulled up to my mother's suburban house, she stood on the porch in a cotton sundress, arms folded tightly. Mira sat on the porch swing, scrolling on her phone. When she saw the guards, she straightened up fast. "What the hell is all this?" Mira asked. "Security," I said simply. "This isn't a few gift cards. It's $10 million. Inside, we walked straight to the back room, an unfinished basement turned storage den. In the far wall was the safe I'd had installed 3 years earlier for Mom's porcelain figurine collection. She once told me those dolls were the only luxury I'll ever own. Well, now her safe was holding mine. It was top tier. Biometric lock, reinforced steel, independent power backup. Luis scanned his code, I scanned my fingerprint, and we loaded all 3 bags inside. Locked. Logged. We'll return at 8:45 sharp, Derek said. As they drove off, Mom turned to me, eyes wide. "You trust me with this much money?" Her voice was a strange cocktail of awe, pride, and something else. Something colder. "You've always been the one person I trusted completely," I said. That night, we had takeout. Thai from Mom's favorite spot. Mira kept asking about the new house. "Do you think there's space for a yoga studio in the back, or like a healing garden?" I brushed it off as a joke. Around 10:30, Mom took a phone call in the laundry room. Said it was Charlene from church. She closed the door behind her. I didn't think anything of it. Later, as I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the old glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling, I heard movement in the hall. Just Mom checking on me, I thought. Like old times. I wish I'd listened more carefully. I wish I'd known that night would be the last time I ever saw either of them as the people I thought they were. Because by morning, they'd be gone. And so would the money. Or so they thought. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds in narrow slats, cutting across the floor in golden lines. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The worn posters on the walls, the scent of lavender dryer sheets, my old stuffed koala still sitting on the top shelf. Then it all came back. The 10 million, the safe. The meeting scheduled for noon to close on the house. I checked the time, 7:42 a.m., more than an hour before Derek and Luis would arrive. Plenty of time for coffee, a quick shower, and then back to changing my life. But the house was silent. Too silent. No sound of my mother's slippers shuffling in the kitchen. No Mira humming while scrolling TikTok. No clinking mugs. No radio playing classic soul on low volume like she always did on weekends. I padded down the hallway, still in my sleep shirt. "Mom?" No answer. "Mira?" I knocked on Mira's door. Nothing. Something prickled at the back of my neck. Her bed was neatly made, untouched. Same with Mom's room. Pillows fluffed, comforter smoothed, not even a dent in the mattress. Panic didn't hit me all at once. It dripped in slowly, like a leak from a pipe above your head that you try to ignore until the ceiling caves in. I moved faster now, toward the basement, toward the safe. The bookcase covering the safe door was ajar. My throat tightened. I pulled it back. The safe, once sealed with biometric locks, was wide open, empty. The 3 duffel bags were gone. I blinked, certain my eyes were playing tricks, opened and closed the door, looked behind it, Looked under the desk, the cabinets, even the stairs, as if $10 million could slip behind the water heater. But deep down, I already knew. They were gone. I sprinted back up the stairs, heart thudding, nausea rising in my throat. That's when I saw it. A piece of lined paper, folded neatly and propped against the coffee maker. My mother's handwriting. I recognized the looping L's and the gentle slant of every sentence. Savannah, we took the money. You'll understand one day. After everything your sister and I sacrificed, we deserve a shot at happiness too. You're smart. You'll bounce back. This was our only chance. Don't come looking. You won't find us. Mom. The page trembled in my hands as I read it again, and again, and again. A shriek rose up from my chest, raw and strangled before I could stop it. I sank to the floor. Cold tile met bare skin. The paper fluttered from my hands. I had trusted them. I had protected them. I had given them everything. And they'd walked out the door with my future tucked under their arms. I grabbed my phone and called Mira, straight to voicemail. I tried Mom. Disconnected. Over and over I redialed. Nothing. When Ethan walked through the front door 20 minutes later, he didn't need to ask what had happened. The open safe, the abandoned coffee maker, my crumpled figure on the floor. They took it, I whispered. They took everything. He knelt beside me, wrapped his arms around me and held me as I shook. I should have listened to you, I said. No, he murmured. They shouldn't have done this. It's not on you. But it felt like it was. Because deep down, I'd always known they saw me differently. That my success came with resentment trailing behind it like a shadow. I just never imagined they'd act on it. 20 minutes later, the Charleston Police Department sent 2 patrol officers. Then came Detective Naomi Brooks. Calm, no nonsense, eyes sharp like broken glass. She took detailed notes, asking the same question 2 different ways. Let me get this straight, she said, finally setting her pen down. You voluntarily placed $10 million in cash into your mother's personal safe. And now it's gone? Yes. And you have proof of the withdrawal? I showed her the receipts on my phone. She photographed them, then looked at me long and hard. I'll be honest, she said. This may not be a simple case of theft. They're your family. You left the money in their home. It could be seen as a gift. It wasn't a gift, I cut in, my voice sharper than intended. It was temporary storage before a property deal. I told them that. She nodded. I believe you. But proving intent will be tricky. I clenched my fists. Then we find something they didn't intend us to see. Because I wasn't just going to let them vanish. Not without a fight. Not without consequences. Detective Brooks wasted no time. Within an hour of leaving my mother's house, she had filed a missing person and financial theft report and flagged their names with Homeland Security. But there was one thing she told me that sank in deeper than the others. If your mother and sister planned this ahead of time, she said, they'll have used fake names, cash-only services, and routes that make them invisible. But invisible people always leave shadows. The first shadow appeared less than 24 hours later. An alert came from an airline manifest flagged by customs, a private charter flight from Savannah, Georgia to Casablanca. 2 passengers, no digital footprint. Paid entirely in cash. They didn't use their real names, but the timing matched. They paid cash for a private jet? I asked, staring at the email Brooks had forwarded me. About $80,000, she replied. Someone was ready to vanish. They had help. And the more we looked, the clearer it became. Lorraine had been emailing someone under the alias Catherine Baird. Encrypted messages sent through a dark web proxy with keywords like asylum, paper trail, and non-extradition. She'd been planning this for months. Mira had a separate burner phone tied to her name through an old gym membership. Its last ping was in a parking lot near a luxury luggage boutique the day before I arrived with the money. They'd bought new identities, new wardrobes, and new futures, all with the money I thought they'd protect. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Ethan, trying to hold it together, brought me tea in the evenings, suggested we go out for air, watch a movie, pretend for just 2 hours that the world hadn't caved in. But I couldn't pretend. This wasn't just about money. It was the theft of something more intimate. The belief that the people who raised you would never weaponize your love against you. They weren't just reckless, I told Brooks one afternoon in her office. They were calculated. They used my trust as cover. Brooks nodded. This wasn't spontaneous. Your sister's online activity shows searches for how to launder stolen cash and life in countries with no extradition. Your mother visited forums about identity replacement 6 months ago. It was like reading a script for a heist movie, except I was the unsuspecting mark. Even worse, news of the theft had leaked. A vague, half-true blog post popped up on a tech gossip site. Biotech CEO's fortune misplaced in family dispute. Suddenly, calls from potential partners went unanswered. A podcast I was booked on quietly canceled. You're making people nervous, my lawyer Amara told me. They're not saying you're incompetent, but if you can't protect your own assets... She didn't need to finish. I knew the subtext. If I was this careless with $10 million, how could they trust me with their capital, their vision, their faith? The real estate agent for the Asheville estate sent a politely worded message the next morning. We've received another offer, and in light of the delay, the sellers have chosen to move forward with it. Best of luck. I didn't respond. What could I say? Sorry, my mom and sister ran off with $10 million in fake money that was supposed to buy my future. That night, Ethan finally snapped. You're spiraling, he said as I sat hunched over my laptop, zooming in on a blurry photo from Mira's social media that I was sure held a clue. I'm trying to fix this. No, you're drowning in it, and you're pulling everything else under too. We argued, loudly. He accused me of shutting him out. I accused him of not understanding. Then he packed a bag and said he was staying at his brother's place for a while. The door closed behind him with a finality that made the air in the room colder. I was alone. No fiancé, no home, no money I could use, no family I could trust. But the one thing I still had was the one thing they didn't know I'd kept. A security system. Not just the safe, not just the biometric locks, but the bags themselves. The currency I had transported to my mother's house? It wasn't ordinary. Each bag had been sealed by Anderson Tactical with traceable tech, embedded strips that could detect when real cash was swapped with counterfeit. Derek and Luis had set it up as part of their high-value protocol. I hadn't paid it much attention. Until now. Because if the strips registered a change, then it meant one thing. The money they took wasn't real. And the real money? Might still be waiting exactly where they'd never expect. It was 10 to 11 in the morning when my phone rang, the kind of hour where bad news usually lives. I blinked at the screen, groggy from another restless sleep. Derek Kane. I sat up instantly. Derek? I croaked. What's going on? Ms. Ellis, he said, voice low and urgent. I need to speak with you. In person. Now. I blinked. It's the middle of the night. Is this about my mother and sister? Yes, he said, but not in the way you think. This isn't something I can say over the phone. I'll be at your apartment in 20 minutes. Then he hung up. 23 minutes later, I opened the door to find Derek standing in my hallway, still in his Anderson Tactical polo, face unreadable. He scanned the room as he stepped inside like someone expecting trouble. Is this place secure? Yes. I live alone now, I said quietly. He nodded. Then let me tell you something you need to hear. He sat down across from me, placed a tablet on the coffee table, and opened a series of tracking logs. You remember those tamper-proof currency strips embedded in the money bags? He asked. I nodded. The ones that could detect chemical composition? They registered a major shift. What does that mean? Derek leaned forward. It means the real money. The actual $10 million was swapped for counterfeits. And that swap didn't happen at your mother's house. It happened at our facility before we even delivered the bags. I stared at him. What? He pulled a folded document from his jacket. This is the instruction form you signed authorizing a contingency exchange. You asked us to switch the real money with high-grade replicas and store the real cash in our vault. I took the paper in trembling hands. My signature was right there. My handwriting, my name. But I didn't remember signing anything like this. Then it hit me. 3 days before the withdrawal, Derek had asked to run through a few final security measures. I'd been distracted, juggling last-minute meetings and paperwork. He had explained it quickly, in legal terms, sliding a tablet toward me. I'd barely glanced at it. I had just signed. Are you telling me my mother and sister stole fake money? Derek nodded. Convincing fakes, yes. Enough to fool stores, restaurants, maybe even hotel clerks. But not banks, not wire transfers. Not any serious purchase. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. They've been flaunting it across Morocco, like they hit the jackpot. Which is how we traced them, Derek added. The fake notes are trackable. They're still broadcasting location data. He handed me the tablet. A blinking red dot hovered over Monaco. I stared at it, not quite believing. So the real money is still in our vault, he said. Untouched. Secured. Waiting on your instruction. I let out a noise I hadn't heard from myself in weeks. A short, sharp laugh. Then another. Derek looked concerned. I'm okay, I said, wiping at my eyes. It's just poetic. Weeks of agony, of betrayal, of sleepless nights and therapy appointments and losing the house and almost losing Ethan. And they were dancing through Europe, living their fantasy on a lie. My anger didn't vanish, but it shifted, hardened into resolve. I stood. I want to see it, I said. The real money. Tonight. Of course. Come with me. 2 hours later, I stood in a temperature-controlled vault beneath Anderson Tactical's downtown headquarters. 3 black duffel bags sat neatly on a stainless steel table. With trembling fingers, I unzipped one. Inside, banded stacks of $500 bills gleamed in the fluorescent light. Crisp. Perfect. Real. All here, Derek said quietly. 10 million. I ran my hand over the edge of the bills. This changes everything, I whispered. Yes, ma'am. I turned to him slowly. You said the tracking strips are still active? He nodded. Real-time monitoring. You can see every place those fakes go, every room they sit in. I stared down at the cash for a long moment, then I looked up. Good, I said, because it's time to take back control. By the next morning, I was no longer a woman grieving betrayal. I was a strategist. I called in every resource I trusted. Derek Kane from Anderson Tactical remained my lead on real-time tracking. Detective Naomi Brooks was reluctant at first, until she saw the evidence. My longtime legal advisor, Amara Lang, handled the international filings. And I reached out to Jules Harper, my former COO and one of the smartest people I'd ever worked with, for operational planning. We set up headquarters in a private conference room at Anderson Tactical. The room smelled like cold steel and ambition. Maps of Europe lined the walls. Surveillance shots from Monaco's airport, luxury stores, and boutique hotels were arranged on the table like a gallery of arrogance. They're staying at the Delacroix Grand in Monte Carlo, Jules reported, pointing at a screen. 2 nights ago, they spent close to $40,000 on jewelry and designer handbags, paid in cash. The bills matched our counterfeits. Yes, Derek added. They even left one at a casino bar as a tip. So they still think they've won, I said, my voice steady. That gives us time. Amara opened her laptop. We've filed emergency motions in Monaco and France to freeze any assets if they attempt to convert cash to property or wired funds. But without proof they knowingly used counterfeit currency, prosecution is still tricky. I smiled faintly. Then we give them proof. We wait until they try something big, something traceable, and then we hit them with everything. Detective Brooks raised an eyebrow. You're not thinking of confronting them personally? I'm not just thinking about it. I said, I'm planning it. A beat of silence. Then Jules grinned. You always did like to close your own deals. We tracked them for 3 more days. During that time, my mother and sister traveled from Monaco to Milan. It didn't take long for them to show their hand. They've made a reservation under the alias Catherine Baird at Ristorante Bellaria, one of the most exclusive rooftop restaurants in Milan, Derek reported. Private dining terrace. Tomorrow at 8:15 p.m. And they're using the fake bills again? Just paid a jeweler in Navigli with one. Amara looked up. Italy has a strong financial crimes task force. If we time this right, we can coordinate with their Guardia di Finanza. The restaurant's a controlled setting, public enough to limit escalation. I took a deep breath. Then that's where I'll face them. That night, I sat alone on the balcony of my apartment, a glass of wine untouched beside me. The air was warm, quiet. I thought about the girl I used to be. The daughter who believed love made people incapable of betrayal. The sister who sent money without keeping receipts. That girl didn't survive. But something stronger had taken her place. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. About staring the truth in the face and refusing to flinch. The next day passed in silence and focus. Final confirmations were exchanged. Italian authorities were on standby. Derek rehearsed surveillance placements. Jules coordinated communications. I wore a simple black silk blouse, tailored trousers, and a small chain with no logo. Understated power. At 8 o'clock p.m. sharp, I walked into Ristorante Bellaria. The rooftop sparkled with city lights. Live violin music drifted through the air. And there they were. My mother, in a navy gown with diamond earrings that had likely been bought with Monopoly money. Mira, draped in gold, flipping her hair and laughing too loudly. They didn't notice me at first. Not until I stepped up to the edge of their table and said quietly, "Room for one more?" Their heads snapped around. Mira went pale. Lorraine froze, a half smile dying on her lips. Savannah? Surprised? I asked, pulling out a chair. They stared at me in silence. I leaned forward, calm, collected. You've been living well. Must be nice. Question is, how long do you think it'll last? Mira stiffened. You followed us? I took out a small stack of the fake bills from my purse and held them up to the candlelight. You've been spending these all over Europe. You know what makes them special? They didn't answer. They're not real. They're chemically traceable replicas, custom engineered to flag every transaction. My mother's face twisted. No, we took them from your safe. After they'd been swapped, I said. I didn't trust you. I didn't want to believe that, but I prepared anyway. Mira's hand shook. You're bluffing. I leaned in closer. The bags you took were tagged, and every step of your little vacation has been logged. I know about the private jet, the casino, the yacht ride in Nice, and now this. Right on cue, Detective Brooks stepped into view with 2 Italian officers in tailored suits. Your aliases are done, I said, rising slowly. The real game is about to begin. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Mira whispered, This isn't happening. Oh, but it is, I said. And this time, I'm in control. The confrontation was quick. Too quick, almost. The moment my mother and Mira realized the truth, that what they'd been spending wasn't money, but evidence, they froze. Detective Brooks and the Italian officers approached without raising their voices. They were calm, methodical, and prepared. One officer addressed my mother in English, politely asking her to come with them for questioning. Mira tried to protest, but even she couldn't deny the weight of what was happening. At first, they tried to act confused, innocent. This is a mistake, my mother said. We haven't done anything wrong. But the weight of the evidence we'd assembled said otherwise. Photos, location logs, receipts, security camera footage from 5 countries. Stacks of the counterfeit bills, found in their hotel room just an hour earlier during a quiet search coordinated by Jules and the Financial Crimes Task Force. They weren't handcuffed, not yet, but they were escorted out of the restaurant in full view of every diner on that glittering rooftop. I remained behind, seated in the same chair across from the untouched bottle of wine they had ordered. And for the first time in weeks, I felt still. Later that night, in a neutral gray interview room at the Milan Financial Crimes Division, I sat across from my mother. She looked older than she had at dinner. Her makeup was smudged, her hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. The designer dress she'd been so proud of now looked like a costume. She didn't meet my eyes for a long time. Why? I asked simply. Her shoulders lifted in a shallow shrug. Because we never had anything. And suddenly, you had everything. I waited, let her keep going. All those years I worked night shifts, came home with aching joints. You barely looked up from your books. I told myself it was for a reason, that one day it'd be worth it. And when it wasn't for me. It was yours. You think I owed you my entire life's work? I said softly. She looked up then, her eyes red-rimmed but not tearful. I think I felt like I was being left behind, that we were just supporting characters in your movie. Even when you gave us things, it came with your terms, your control, your conditions. The words stung more than I expected. Not because they were entirely true, but because part of them was. I had set boundaries. I'd drawn lines when Mira blew through $3,000 in a week and asked for more. I'd offered help with conditions like therapy or school or budgeting. I didn't give them blank checks. Because I didn't think love should come with blind surrender. And maybe to her that felt like judgment. But even if her resentment was real, even if her pain had roots, I hadn't deserved this. Mom, I said slowly, you didn't just take money. You orchestrated a theft, forged documents, bought fake identities. You manipulated your own daughter. She closed her eyes. I didn't know how to ask for help anymore. You could have asked for anything, I said. Except for everything. In another room, Mira told a different version of the story to Detective Brooks. She said it would just be a loan, she muttered. That we'd take the money, start over somewhere, and send some back when we could. She made it sound harmless. She planned this for months, Brooks pointed out. Mira bit her lip. I think I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe we were owed something. But when we started spending it and nothing happened, I started to feel untouchable. She looked down at her manicured hands, still trembling. I didn't realize until tonight that we weren't in control. Not even close. The legal process unfolded over the following weeks. Amara worked with Italian prosecutors and U.S. authorities to coordinate charges. Lorraine was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, possession of counterfeit currency, and theft across jurisdictions. Mira faced lesser charges, accessory to fraud and identity misuse. My mother was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Mira received 3, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. Some might say I should have been there at the sentencing. Read a victim impact statement. Made sure the judge saw the tears I cried at 3 a.m., the partners I lost, the nights I lay in bed wondering if I was broken beyond repair. But I didn't go. I didn't need a courtroom to validate what I already knew. They'd lost the most valuable thing of all, their relationship with me. And no sentencing could fix that. 3 months later, I finally bought a home. Not the flashy glass mansion in Asheville, but a cottage nestled in the Smoky Mountains. It had wraparound porches, wildflowers, and a little greenhouse out back. Peaceful, honest, mine. Ethan returned eventually. We had coffee, talked for hours, apologized for the parts we both played in the unraveling. But when he asked if I wanted to try again, I told him the truth. I'm still rebuilding, and this time I want to do it alone. Because I wasn't the same woman he'd left behind. I was stronger now, but not in the way people usually meant it. Not harder, not colder, just more aware, more deliberate, more willing to guard the gates of my heart. And maybe that was enough. It took time, longer than I expected, for the world to quiet down again. After the sentencing, after the headlines faded and the emails from journalists stopped filling my inbox, I finally had space to breathe. Not to forget, but to exist outside the weight of betrayal. People love a clean ending. They want the twist, the justice, the moment the villain gets what they deserve. But healing doesn't come with a finale. It comes in pieces. Quiet moments, unremarkable mornings. The first time I slept through the night without dreaming of the safe. The first time I laughed, really laughed, over dinner with Jules. The first time I walked past a mother and daughter on the street and didn't feel like someone had punched the air out of my lungs. I launched a new venture. Not another startup, but a mentorship fund for women in tech who had faced betrayal, burnout, or breakdowns. We called it True North, because sometimes you have to lose everything to find the direction that actually matters. I didn't talk publicly about what happened. Not at first. But when I finally did, on a small podcast with a former professor, I was flooded with messages. I thought I was the only one. My brother stole from me too. My parents used my student loans to gamble. Thank you for saying it out loud. It wasn't just about the money. It never had been. It was about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you break you. I started hearing from people who weren't in tech at all. Nurses, teachers, veterans. A woman who owned a bakery in Maine wrote me a letter on actual paper and ended with a line I'll never forget. You didn't just survive betrayal, you turned it into a map the rest of us can follow. And maybe that's what this story really is. Not a revenge tale, not a tragedy, not a cautionary tale even. Just a map. A reminder that sometimes the ones who hurt us the most wear faces we love. That trust, when shattered, doesn't have to stay broken forever. That choosing to rebuild, even when you have every reason to burn everything down, that's power. One morning, about 9 months after the night at the restaurant in Milan, I stood in my greenhouse trimming lavender, sun cutting through the glass in golden stripes. My phone buzzed. It was a video call request from Mira. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me didn't want to look, didn't want to hear another excuse, another version of the story where I was the villain for having boundaries. But I answered. Her face was thinner, eyes tired but not angry. She was in a facility somewhere. Pale walls, folding chair, no makeup. "Hi," she said. "Hi." A pause. Silence heavy but not sharp. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I blinked. Waited. "I don't expect anything from you," she added. "I just needed you to hear it. I was angry. At everything. And you were the easiest person to blame because you kept going when we couldn't." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. Another pause. "You look good," she said. "The lavender suits you." I gave her a faint smile. "I hope you find your own garden someday." The call ended, and that was it. No resolution, no promises, just a sliver of something real, something human. Later that evening, I curled up with a mug of tea and opened my journal, the same one I'd started the day after the theft, filled with every thought I hadn't dared speak. I flipped to a blank page, and I wrote, "They didn't win, and I didn't break. I just became someone they never expected. Free." Because that was the final twist. It wasn't that I got the money back, or that they went to prison. It was that I got me back. I relearned how to trust, not blindly, but with clarity. I stopped measuring love by how much I could give until it hurt. I stopped apologizing for having boundaries. And I started living, not just surviving. If you're hearing this and you've been betrayed by a parent, a partner, a friend, I want you to know this. Their betrayal says everything about them. It says nothing about your worth. You didn't deserve it. You didn't cause it. But you get to decide what comes next. You get to write the next chapter. I've shared my story not to shock you, but to show you that even when the people you trust most turn their backs, the story isn't over. Sometimes it's just beginning. So if you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered how you'd survive what happened, know this. You already are, and you're not alone. Thank you for listening. Until next time, trust wisely, love deeply, and never mistake survival for weakness.